All right, here you can see my name, Susie Nordstrom, and also the link I was just referring to. So I'm sorry about that. We'll get to it later. I'm not that familiar with Zoom. We usually use Teams, but more about that later. Um, Again, if you want to access our website, the link is on here, and I think Jay already said he's going to make this available later on, so you will be able to get that. So here's our agenda for the evening. We're going to go over a little bit about what our university is, what it's about, advising at CSUSM, also graduation requirements. There are various different ones, degree planning, and also the tools that your student is using and is going to be using to plan out every semester, our services in academic advising, various academic resources will also, of course, share, and how to support your student. And hopefully at the end, we'll have some time for some Q&A. So any burning questions, hold them, and we'll get to them, I'm sure, at the end. So to get started, first, let's talk about the university. So universities are a little bit different from high school. Typically, often students as well as parents, we think of a university and a college as the same thing. It is not exactly the same thing. The university tends to be an umbrella organization essentially and is comprised of numerous colleges. So at Cal State San Marcos, we have four colleges, and you can see them right here on the screen. You can also see that we love acronyms. So you can see right here, COBA is one of the four. That's the College of Business Administration. CEHHS is the College of Education, Health, and Human Services. JABS is the College of Humanities, Arts, Behavioral, and Social Sciences. And CSTEM is the College of Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. Every major at San Marcos State University is housed in one of those colleges. And we'll learn more about that right here. We have about 38 majors and 53 minors now. That is increasing all the time. So each year there may be a major added or a minor added, sometimes more than one. And every student, so every one of your student will select a major field of study. Most of the students probably have one selected already. It's possible that your student is undeclared, meaning they have not yet decided on a major. That also happens, but eventually all students have to declare a major, right? Because at the end of the day, we want them to graduate in their field of study. So some students may even decide to do two majors. That's possible, but it is not something that's required. Now, the minors are interesting. A minor is optional. Some students add a minor because they have additional elective units that they need to take anyway, and this is one organized way sort of to make use of those elective units. Some students are simply interested in another topic altogether, and some students want to complement maybe their major field of study. All of those things are okay. And it is also perfectly okay not to declare a minor. Again, students are not required to have a minor, and many do not. But some students will. Students can also declare two minors. That also is possible. So a lot of different options and different combinations are possible when you're playing with the majors. So what's important to note is that students can change their majors and their minors. Sometimes students find that they're interested in a different field after a while. They can certainly change their major. The one thing to keep in mind, however, when students change major is that some majors at CSUSM are impacted. Impaction simply means that there are more students in the major than the university can accept. A common one is nursing, for example. Students cannot change to the nursing major once they're at CSUSM. That major is highly impacted. But other majors are impacted, but there are still ways to change into them. But for that reason, for the impaction criteria, it's always best to meet with an academic advisor. So, for example, if you have a student that is currently a history major and wants to change into business administration, definitely have to meet with a business advisor to make sure that they're able to change and they know which courses to take and make a new plan. And a fun fact that we all forget and sometimes don't think about it all, students change their major more often than we think. There are actually statistics out there. 30% of undergraduates actually change their major at least once. So it's not unusual to do it. 10% of students will change their major more than once. So, and I myself too, as an example, changed my major 2 times, and in the end ended up going back to my original major and double majored. So, again, lots of different options, but don't be alarmed if your student wants to have that conversation. It's perfectly okay and natural to find what they would like to do. On the slides, again, you can see all the different majors fall into different colleges, right? So many of them are in JABS, the College of Humanities, Arts, and Behavioral Sciences. And then you can see for CSTEM, the majors as well. For COBA, Business Administration has various options. And then also Health and Human Services, Human Development, Kinesiology, Nursing, and Public Health. So a lot of different options available for students. Now we'll move on to advising at CSUSM. You see a picture. This is a picture right here of some of our advising staff. I'm on this picture as well. This was at one of our events on campus, Cougar Blue Days. That's always a lot of fun welcoming students. But there are 3 different types of advising at CSUSM. And one of them is faculty advising, another one specialized advising, and then lastly, staff academic advising. So faculty advisors are, as the name suggests, faculty, usually professors within the major that the students are studying. Faculty advisors can help students with career suggestions, also internship advice, potentially graduate school options, and course approvals if they're needed. Specialized advising, those are advisors for student groups in certain groups like EOP or camp, success coaching, which Jay mentioned earlier, is one of those groups as well. There are counselors and coaches who provide also guidance and support to those students. A lot of those students are for specific populations, often first generation students, underserved communities. Success coaching is for first year students, things of that nature. And then lastly is staff academic advising, and that's where our office comes in, the Office of Academic Advising. So our office consists of professional staff advisors, and we advise all students that are admitted as undergraduate students to CSUSM. We advise by major, so your student will see typically the same 1 or 2 advisors within the major that they've decided to study. We typically have 2 or 3 advisors, and that way there's always someone available, right? Sometimes someone's out on vacation and whatnot, but there will always be somebody here that can help and answer questions. We basically advise students starting with the June that students are admitted all the way until they graduate. So we help the students specifically with their academic progress. We help them with course selection, make plans, make sure that the right classes are chosen, right? And also explain certain policies and procedure that come up throughout the time here. And if students are part of a specialized program, typically they should still come see us as well if there are more detailed questions, right? Again, we work all together, and it's a good idea to always come see us. We work closely with the Office of the Registrar when it comes to processing student graduation. So we want to make sure we verify that all the different requirements are met that students need to meet in order to graduate. Ultimately, all of our goals is the same, which is to help students achieve their academic goals and support them on their journey all the way to graduation. And next, we're going to get to graduation requirements. You can see on the pie chart here, it's divided into three different categories. There are general education requirements, university requirements, and major and minor requirements. So the general education requirements, those are courses that cover the areas 1 through 6. All students at CSUSM or at any CSU need to complete those. Okay. Students will all go through all of them. They typically include also things like writing courses, math, science, history, and so forth. The next requirement is the university requirements, and there are different ones there too. And one that we have here at CSUSM is a diversity and equity requirement. Those are specific courses focusing on those issues. Every student, in order to graduate, must have a 2.0 GPA, grade point average, at the end. And every student must complete 120 units to graduate. So residency requirements are also university requirements, and that means that a minimum of 30 units must be completed at CSUSM. Why is that important? That's important typically for transfer students. So if your students are first year students, probably that won't come up. But sometimes, if you have a transfer student somewhere, that may be coming up. 30 units would be a minimum to complete at CSUSM. And then, of course, there are the major and minor requirements. We already touched on majors and minors earlier. Each major has a very specific set of requirements. Generally, that includes somewhere between 45 units and 70 units to graduate. So students can view all of those requirements in detail in their enrollment tools, the degree planner, as well as the academic requirement report. We'll go over those a little bit more shortly. We also, on our website, when you do browse our website, have available GE worksheets, so general education worksheets, as well as major and minor worksheets that just list the course requirements for that major or that minor. Sometimes it helps to see what is it that I would be learning doing those majors, right? And so we have those available as well. And now we come to the next important thing, and that is setting the pace of study. We've already talked about that it requires 120 units to graduate. So usually the 120 units are not an issue. So a major that has a lot of unit requirements, like a science major or COBA, usually students will reach 120 units without even thinking about this. However, some majors have a lower requirement for the major. That may be something like art, media, and design, or maybe history or something like that. And in that case, the student will have added additional elective units. Those will be visible on the student's degree planner. So the student will know that they exist. So on this slide, what's really important is the slide is divided essentially into 4 years, as you can see. Each year consists of 30 units and each semester of 15 units. We divide it that way evenly because it makes the path toward graduation clear, right? So if you have 120 units, you divide it by semester, the student would enroll in 15 units each semester. Now, it is important to know that not every student is going to take 15 units every semester, okay? It is perfectly fine for a student to decide that, you know what, 15 units, 5 courses each semester, that's a little bit more than I want to tackle, and maybe that student enrolls in 12 units each semester. That's totally fine. What is important to know that if students change the number of courses or the number of units that they're taking each semester, it does also change potentially the time toward graduation. right? So if a student takes 12 units each semester instead of 15, it will add a semester at the end, right? Sometimes students make that up in the summers. So that's also an option. So students could take one or two classes in the summer, right, to offset the lower unit semester. And that's all totally fine. Now, again, if a student takes longer than 4 years to graduate, that is not unusual. It's totally fine. There are a lot of students that opt to take 5 years to graduate. So especially if students are in a high unit major, like a science major or something like that. So again, most students probably do take more than 4 years, depending on how it goes and what their majors are, right? So again, remaining flexible is probably a good idea, but especially talking with students about pacing. And why is it important? Ultimately, is the amount of work involved, right? When you talk to your student about how many courses should they be taking, it's important to note that every unit in a course basically equals an hour of class and 2 hours of homework per week. Now, it's not an exact science, right? This is sort of an average. But when a student takes 15 units, right, that's 15 hours of class time and 30 hours of homework per week, which actually comes to 45 hours. And that's definitely a full-time job, right? So that's something that you want to probably have a conversation about with your student, maybe when it comes to deciding on pacing. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So especially, this is what I wanted to mention too, especially if you have a student that it has a lot of extracurricular activities, right? If you have a student that is an athlete or a student that also works part-time, definitely keep in mind that 15 units may be a lot for them, and maybe going down to 12 units may be a good idea. So again, remaining flexible is key here, and having that open conversation is always important. And that leads us to our enrollment tools. We have two very important enrollment tools, the degree planner and the schedule assistant. And then the third tool, which you see listed on the top here, is the academic requirement report, which lists all requirements, as the name implies, right? So the academic requirement report tracks all of the students' requirements, and it's color coded. So it's color coded in red square. That means their course is outstanding. A yellow color means that the student is enrolled in something, and green with a check mark means that a requirement has been completed. So it is a nice tool to double check if requirements are being met as students are enrolling in classes. It is also the report that we use to verify progress toward degree for students and with students. So definitely have them get familiar with that. The next one, the degree planner. This is the tool that students will be probably using most often. The degree planner is divided into semesters. Each semester shows requirements that the students should be enrolling in next, as they are planning their course load. They will use the degree planner to select courses. So if a student has a GE outstanding, let's say, and it's listed in the degree planner, there will be a link that's called Select, and students can click on that, and that will open up a pick list of various courses. And the list can be really long to, I don't know, 20 courses or as short as 3 courses. And any of those courses that come up on that pick list, students can select from to enroll in for that particular requirement. The degree planner typically defaults to 15 units per semester. Like we talked about before, that's roughly how many units it would take to graduate in 4 years. But it's also flexible, meaning students can change the number of units on the degree planner. Students are also able to move requirements between semesters if needed. And again, meet with us if there are questions that maybe students need help with as they're going through the enrollment process. So like right now, students probably should be looking at the degree planner and kind of thinking about which courses to take in the spring. And then lastly is the schedule assistant. And that tool will then use the courses students have selected in the degree planner and help them find electronically schedules that will use those courses. So it is an easier way, no longer do we need to write down on a piece of paper all the dates and times and different classes. You can actually use this tool and it will give the student all the schedule options with the courses that they have selected in the degree planner. It's super convenient. And it will help a lot in finding classes that students need. And on the next slide, we are talking about timeline. And wouldn't you know, November 12th, today, is actually when the class schedule is published. So students can go on and you can go on with your student on the course schedule already for the spring and see which courses are offered. That's good to know because it also means that you can select already the appropriate courses in your degree planner and start looking at those schedules. The enrollment for spring 26 will begin next week on Monday, November 17th. So between November 17th and December 5th is the enrollment period. That's when most students should be, or actually all continuing students should be enrolling during that time. Typically, students are initially limited to enrolling in 16 units. That will increase on December 15th to 19 units. We don't necessarily recommend students enroll in 19 units, right? Especially first year students. However, if you have a student that really has a lot of time and wants to speed up to graduation, it's certainly a possibility on December 15th. Initial enrollment is 16 units. That's typically the 5 classes we talked about earlier. And then that same process, of course, repeats again, right? Later in the spring, when students are going to be enrolling for fall 26 in April, the schedule for fall will come out, and then the enrollment will be in April and May. So this cycle repeats basically every semester. Now, what you don't see on here on that slide is that we also do have summer and winter courses available that students can take, and those enrollments usually happen a little bit later or earlier rather. So for winter courses for this upcoming winter enrollment was already available in October. And then the same will happen in the spring for summer. Enrollment for summer courses is typically in March. Let's see. And here are our academic advising services. So if your student needs help with selecting classes or planning future semesters, definitely encourage them to meet with us. We're here for them. Connecting with us is relatively easy. It is not required that your students come see us, but we really do want them to come see us when they need help. And we even recommend that they check regularly, at least once a year. If you have a student that's in a science field or in business, probably once a semester even is a good idea, just to make sure everything is taken care of. And of course, they can meet us additionally at any time. And we have various ways to catch us. One of them is via email. We have e-advisors available that can also be found on our website. Students can email us questions that are relatively simple at any time, right? Responses will be between 3 and 5 business days. We try to do it quickly. We of course offer scheduled appointments. Those appointments are 30 minutes long, and those are the ones we typically recommend for students when they want to go over the degree plan, right? In actually planning out the career and the timeline on here. There are one-on-one appointments The student can meet us in person or via phone or virtually. Students can schedule on the same day up to 2 weeks in advance. Now, I want to address the virtual point really quickly. I know we're currently on Zoom. We in our office, we do not use Zoom for virtual meetings. We actually use Microsoft Teams. If your student is not on Teams yet, please encourage them to get on Teams. That is how we meet with our students and how we communicate at the university a lot. It's super convenient. Any chat we put into Teams is good to know that stays actually on Teams. So when we are putting links in there, students aren't losing them, and so forth. So definitely encourage them to do it if they haven't yet. And then lastly, drop-in advising. This one is super important coming up for enrollment period. During drop-in advising, what that means basically is we students get 15 minutes with us. There is no appointment required. Students can come in person. However, we recommend doing it virtually because it gets so very busy. But what I would recommend or what I would want to point out is if your student needs assistance with enrollment during enrollment period, which begins next week, they should definitely come and sign in for drop-in advising. And again, for that also we use Microsoft Teams. There will be a sign-in sheet that is posted on our Teams channel, and that puts students in line by major, and we will reach out to them when they are next in line. So all they need to do is sign in and then make sure that they remain logged into Teams. And then in the meantime, they can continue working on their projects and homework and things like that, right? So that would be the reason why we say virtual is probably better because students can continue on studying or whatever they're doing that day. So definitely we're here for them during that enrollment period. And we also have group advising available. Group advising is offered typically by major. I'm actually doing a group advising session tomorrow for theater majors. So if you have a theater major, you can send them our way. The advising Zoom or the advising link is also listed actually on our website. So when you go on our website, you should see that there as well. Then we have our peer advisors available. Peer advisors do classroom presentations as well, but mostly students will come into contact with them at our front desk in person as well as on our Teams channel and via phone. They are available all business hours, and they can help students with any questions that come up that are more of basic nature. And peers usually will refer the student to us when we get into more details. Again, front desk, that is covered by our intake advisors as well as our peer advisors. Again, available in person as well as virtually on Microsoft Teams. Open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And we tend to respond on that front desk channel super quick. And then lastly, academic resources. There are a lot of resources on campus. Here are some links, for tutoring services, like the Academic Success Center, Supplemental Instruction, STEM Success Center, and the Writing Center. So if your student needs any assistance at all, definitely, have them go ahead and connect with any of the different centers for assistance. In-person student tutoring is available, online tutoring is available. There are study sessions for difficult courses like chemistry, econ, psychology 360, and so on. So I would definitely encourage you to have your student attend any of those or connect with those different resources if needed. And then an important conversation, this is why we're really here, is fostering independence, right? When students first start, they are learning to become independent. And sending a student off to college is a major milestone in their lives and in your lives, right? And it's a significant investment into their future. It's a great opportunity for your student to become more independent, and we encourage students to meet with us on their own. Um, that doesn't mean that you cannot attend meetings. You most certainly can, but we try to essentially connect with your student, create and build rapport so that we're able to mentor them and support them throughout their academic career, right? So the main reason why we advocate for students also to be themselves is because the university is also bound by FERPA, which is the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, simply meaning that students have a right to privacy and on their record. Um, Students can and are welcome to invite a guest, right? So you could be that guest to their appointment if they think it's beneficial. If that's the case and you are attending the meeting, there is a process where you have to make sure that you're submitting a FERPA release authorization in advance, that will allow you to be part of the meeting. And you can totally do that. The student can find that in the student center. So when they go to their student center, they'll be able to go ahead and find that and submit that authorization. Again, working one-on-one with the student helps strengthen the relationship. A lot of my students come with questions that they have worked out with their parents in advance or with another friend or mentor in advance, and it just bring the questions in and we talk about them. So that is another way to do it, and that way you're working with the student, but the student also is working on being independent. So that has worked really well for most students. Um, Now, how can you support your students in addition to attending meetings potentially? Help them know where to find the enrollment dates. Make sure that they check their degree planner and the ARR often, right? Especially during busy times like enrollment. And also after grades have been posted, right? It's important to check grades. Sometimes students find themselves surprised about a grade. Know where to find the dates for drop-ins, right? You can find them on our website. But if your student is having trouble finding them, definitely help them find them so that they can come in. Help them find how to schedule an advising appointment. You can also help your student keep up with their CSUSM email or make sure that they check their email. It's very important. We send a lot of emails regarding advising, and I know they also get emails from the Office of the Registrar about enrollment dates and so forth. And those are sort of little things that you can help your student and support your student going forward. And any resources that you find helpful, share them with your students so that they can go ahead and look them up as well. And that would conclude my slides.